welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. I'm a retired New York City police detective with 20 plus years of law enforcement. And guys and girls, if you like all things true crime related from a police perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you will get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. And tonight, I'm happy to be back. We are going to be talking about Lori Daybell Shallow Vallow. Her attorney, Mark Means, disqualified yesterday. That was the breaking news. It was top news. But as you guys know, I was suffering from COVID and I was a little down and out, so I couldn't give it to you breaking, but I got a burst of energy. And you guys heard it earlier today while I was doing my afternoon broadcast. So a special thank you to my Patreon supporters, the channel members, all the folks who subscribe and positively engage in this community. I can't tell you how much Ed and Wallace and I appreciate you guys and the messages and emails and thoughts and prayers that you sent to us. It is just brings such joy to my heart. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your positive messages. Now, Ed Wallace went to the doctors today as an update real quick before we get into Lori Shallow Vallow. His lungs upper has some congestion in it, fluid. They're treating it with medication, a higher steroid dose. He's going to be all right. I spoke to him on the phone, and he sends his thanks and his love to all of you guys. So Ed Wallace wants me to just let you guys know, big, big hearts and love from Big Eddie Wallace. He'll be back just like I made it back in no time at all. After the first of the year, we're going to be going full steam ahead. But we got two really great special guests for you tonight. One, you know, Joe Murray. He is our Silver Fox. He is the star of Allegedly Guilty with his co-host, Angie. You know, they're doing great stuff, but he's so busy this time of year. We're going to talk about his channel. We're going to talk about what he's got coming up in 2022 for you guys. But before we get into it, I want to show you just a little piece. It's from Court TV, and it's Vinnie Politan. He's going to tell us a little bit about what happened yesterday, just to set it up for Joe and my special guest. So without further ado, I'm going to play this little piece so you guys know what we're going to be talking about. Mark Means, disqualified. And he should have been disqualified long ago, but unfortunately, the law and the justice system dragged their feet on this one.
Trial scheduled for 2022. It's the trial of the so-called doomsday prophet Chad Daybell. Also, his wife, Lori, for trial because she's been deemed not competent to stand trial. But take a look right here. This is one of her first appearances in court with a couple of attorneys. And the attorney on her right is Mark Means. That is the attorney that she trusts. That's the attorney who's been by her side from the beginning of all of this. But as we sit here tonight, he is now officially off the case. Let me show you the judge's ruling from a motion made by the state. The state's motion is granted. Means is hereby disqualified as of today's date from representing Lori Noreen Vallow Daybell in Fremont County and all matters substantially related thereto. This is a huge development in the case. Mark Means has been Lori Daybell's, as I said, attorney from the beginning. As soon as she was extradited from Hawaii and back in Idaho, he's been there. He is the one that she chose. She's the one who's been with the Daybells for quite some time now, and that's one of the problems with his representation right now. We're going to dive into that in just a moment. But for those of you not familiar with this story, wow, what a story. Chanley Painter has more for us tonight.
September 1st, 2019. Lori Vallow Daybell and her brother Alex Cox moved from Arizona to Rexburg, Idaho, with Lori's children, JJ and Tylee. Rexburg is just a few miles from Salem, Idaho, the home of Chad Daybell, her future husband and co-defendant on charges related to her children's disappearances. September 8th, Lori, Alex, JJ, and Tylee go to Yellowstone National Park for the day. Police say this picture is the last verifiable sighting of Tylee alive. Lori had told friend Melanie Gibb that Tylee is taking classes at BYU, Idaho, but records confirmed Tylee was never enrolled. September 19th. Melanie Gibb and her boyfriend visit Lori for the weekend. Lori tells Gibb that JJ has become a zombie. Gibb later tells police nothing seems unusual about his behavior. This is the courtyard where JJ is seen on camera playing with neighborhood kids. But in September, according to police, the children would go missing. September 22nd, the last verifiable sighting of JJ by Melanie Gibb and her boyfriend in Lori's home. November 5th, Lori and Chad tie the knot in Hawaii. November 26th, Rexburg police get involved with the search for the kids at the request of police in Gilbert, Arizona. Rexburg police knocked on this door, conducting a welfare check requested by JJ Vallow's grandparents. Lori told police that JJ was with a friend in Arizona. But when that story didn't check out, the police returned the next day with a search warrant, only to find Lori and her new husband, Chad Daybell, were nowhere to be found. December 20th. While Lori and Chad are back in Hawaii, Rexburg police announced JJ and Tylee are officially missing. January 3rd, 2020, authorities execute a search warrant on Chad Daybell's property. March 6th, Lori has her first court appearance in Rexburg on felony desertion charges after being arrested in Hawaii. June 9th, police and the FBI return to Daybell's property and discover human remains in a field behind the home. Later, Chad Daybell is arrested and charged with felony counts of destruction or concealment of evidence. June 13th, authorities confirm the remains belong to JJ and Tylee.
And then Lori Daybell, Chad Daybell, both charged with the murders and also charged with the murder of Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell. Unbelievable story. So let's get back to today's huge headline in this case. Mark Means booted from the case because of a motion brought by the prosecutor. Let me put up on the screen what the judge found in the reasoning behind removing Mark Means from representing Lori Daybell. The court finds that Mark Means did represent Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow Daybell, so he's her co-defendant, so potential, I guess, conflict there. Mark Means is not qualified to represent a potential death penalty case. However, there is death penalty counsel on the defense team. Mark Means' filings caused the court to question his effectiveness as counsel.
So I'm going to pause it right there and bring on my first guest. You guys all know and love him. That's criminal defense attorney Joe Murray, the Silver Fox. Joe, Merry Christmas and coming up on a Happy New Year. It's always great to see you, brother. How are you?
Yeah, it's so good to see you. You look very healthy, thank God. And just checking how the rest of the family. Is everybody okay?
You know, Joe, my wife and my son, who's just right outside the door of my studio, they're over double digits, 14 plus days into this thing. And nice. They're making a good, comeback. Not quite like the champ right here, not like Muhammad Ali. I really bounced back after day 8. So my strength is up. I'm happy to be back. I'm energetic. I took a nap when I came home because I did a live stream and I really let out a lot of energy. But Joe, I want to put this back up and get back into the meat and potatoes of this thing.
Yeah, sure.
These 3 statements, Mark Means did represent Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell prior to criminal charges. Mark Means is not qualified to represent potential death penalty case, and Mark Means' filings caused the court to question his effectiveness as counsel. Now, you and I have spoken privately about this, but we've seen other criminal defense attorneys on YouTube and on television question Mr. Means' qualifications. You got anything, like any of your thoughts as a criminal defense attorney yourself on the actions of Mark Means and some of his filings? Because I found them to be bizarre, and I'm not even an expert.
Yeah, I have such mixed feelings, and I really feel bad for Judge Boyce. He's really on the hot seat here because you have some competing interests here, some very fundamental Sixth Amendment constitutional right to counsel, and it's the counsel of your choice, not who the judge says gets to represent me, someone I selected. And that's what we have here. Lori Daybell selected Mark Means. Now, a lot of people criticize Bertolino in the Gabby Petito case when he was representing both the parents and Brian Laundrie. They were like, he's a real estate lawyer. He doesn't know anything about criminal law. But sometimes the relationship is the priority, the confidence, the trust in that person is the priority. So maybe Bertolino wasn't the most skilled lawyer in a murder case or a murder investigation, particularly one that's, we had so many different jurisdictions going on here. He was in New York, they were in Florida, then it was out in Wyoming, and, there was all kinds of stuff going on. But the relationship was so fundamentally important. That's your constitutional right to have the attorney of your choice. So the judge is faced with that incredible fundamental right that Lori has. And then he also has to weigh the interests of justice.
Right.
That he has to avoid a mistrial. He has to try to protect the integrity of the court process to make sure she gets a fair trial. And if he sees things that are possibly running afoul of that, he's got a duty. He's got a duty to make inquiry, to find out, to make sure that this will, the biggest concern, and it's not just because I'm a criminal defense attorney, the biggest concern here is not so much, protecting the prosecutor's batting average. Okay, if you get another win, we have to protect that win. No, we're talking about a death penalty case. This is a very serious case, and you have to weigh those interests. The client, because it's a death penalty case, wants to have the person of their choice that they're comfortable with, but the government also has to make sure that it's a balance of, you're protecting the interests of a fair trial. So I really, it's a tough decision. I don't think it's over. I think if she is rendered competent, we're going to revisit this. She has a right to the counsel of her choice. And if she's rendered competent and says, I want Mark Means, I think the court will be hard pressed not to let her have him.
Even with the findings here that he did represent Chad Daybell prior to criminal charges coming forward, and there was that client privileged information that was exchanged between the two, you still feel, in your professional opinion, that the court might consider putting Mr. Means back after that debacle?
That's an interesting point, but you got to understand what you're talking about here. This is when you have two clients and they're both sharing confidential information with you. The client that you're no longer going to represent, in this case, Chad, has prior. So Means is not going to represent Chad anymore. Right. He has the ability to get Mark Means kicked off because Chad shared secrets with Mark Means that Mark Means can use now in defending Lori and possibly pointing the finger at Chad. So it's his interest. It's not so much Lori's interest. Now it's his interest that he has to waive that and give consent to that. Right. So it's a little different.
So this lawyer that they put, the capital punishment lawyer, James Archibald, it's no secret that Lori Daybell Vallow expressed that she did not like this guy. It happened, this is a long drawn out process that we're going on 2 years here. He goes to see her. He made a request, I think today or yesterday, to stay the hearing so he can go and speak to his client. He actually, in that Zoom meeting that I watched, said that she might be watching from the institution that she's in, the actual Zoom meeting as it was going on, as it was commencing. So the judge said, yes, I'm going to grant you time to go and speak to your client. So what you're saying is if she says, I do not want you to represent me, I want Mr. Means back, that the court may visit that? I thought that that was impossible to have happen due to the circumstances that we have unfolding in front of us.
Yeah, it can't happen right now because she's declared incompetent. She can't make that decision right now.
Right.
But it's something the court will have to consider once she's been rendered competent, either through medication or therapeutic means, electric shock, whoever, you know.
Right.
But once she's been rendered competent, that's her decision to make. And the court must tread very lightly on the defendant choosing and selecting their counsel of choice.
Right. Yeah. You know, you're talking about that Sixth Amendment, right? That's where it comes in and teeters here. I guess it's a fine line that we walk. It brings me to my next special guest. It's a first time for this person appearing on Crime Time with DutyRon, and I'm honored to invite and have this person come on. She is a great friend of Crime Time with DutyRon. She's a friend of also allegedly guilty and police off the cuff. She's always around. Her name is Jessica, and she has to unmute, but she's been waiting patiently. The Mystery Maven. Jess, welcome. It's always great to have you. It's always great to see you. I think you're still muted on your mic because I see a line through the microphone. There you go.
How's that?
Yes, welcome. Thank you for joining. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself. This is Jessica from the Mystery Maven.
Well, thank you so much for having me here tonight. And I'm so glad to see that you're back and you're up. And I hope you're taking it easy and not overdoing it. And of course, it's good to see my fellow counselor, Joe. I hope you're doing well. I'm Jessica. I'm also known as the Mystery Maven on YouTube. I'm an attorney with more than 21 years experience in both civil and criminal law cases. For about 15 years or so, I was a special prosecutor in a municipality, and I prosecuted and defended cases on their behalf. And I've done some private practice work, and I've taught some legal and criminal justice classes as well. And I have a YouTube channel, which is the Mystery Maven. And I love everything true crime, and I'm a big fan or subscriber to DutyRon and to Allegedly Guilty as well.
That is awesome.
And yeah, and I mean, ultimately, my goal in my channel is I want to make the law more accessible to people and more understandable to people, because I think that oftentimes it is a mystery to people, and that's okay. I think that a lot of people might not have firsthand experience in a courtroom, or they might not work in a court or whatever, and you know, they're probably lucky for not going into a courtroom in many cases. So that's really like my goal, to be on YouTube, is break it down.
You know, Jess, what I really love about your channel, and I really looked into it quite a bit in the last couple of months, you know, after we started speaking. But what I really love about what you do is that you give explanations in layman's terms. And I love to use that word because layman's terms is so we all can understand it. So when I listen to you talk, it's not like a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. It's really like kind of stuff so the regular person, listen, I know how to put handcuffs on somebody. I know about the law. But this part is why I invited you and Joe Murray to come on with us, because I wanted to get your take on this. And that brings me to asking you the question. Do you feel that Mark Means has a chance to come back and represent Shallow Vallow?
I completely appreciate where Joe is coming from, and I understand his perspective. And I do think that there is a very significant, like the idea of choosing your own attorney in that relationship is sacrosanct. And I think that that is something that a court would take into consideration, you know, the choice that that person seeks as their attorney. I think here personally that the ethical violations here, I personally don't see that he could come back from this, and I could be wrong. But I looked at the Idaho ethics rules for attorneys, and I'm licensed in New York myself, but I did look at Idaho briefly today, and it just talks about how an attorney should not represent clients if there is a concurrent conflict of interest in some way, if one party is adverse to the other, and if you can't uphold your duty to zealously and effectively represent one of them. And part of like my issue here is that, you know, he might have gained information from Chad when he represented him that, you know, and now was representing Lori. And I just feel like there's in the law and in ethics, an attorney can't be a witness. So what I mean by that is that, let's say a lawyer talks to, you know, a third party, like, so they have the lawyer, their client, and then another person. So if the lawyer goes and talks to that person, then in that interview, like, they're getting information from that person. And in this case, because they're both having separate trials, I don't know if they're exactly the same charges or very similar charges.
It's similar.
I feel like in that interview and that person revealed important information to them, let's say that that person now becomes unavailable. So maybe their testimony needs to be brought into Lori's case, for example. This is just hypothetically speaking. What I'm thinking is that if Chad was unavailable, now, God forbid he dies or something happens to him, now you have an attorney who's essentially a witness if they have that knowledge from that former client, and an attorney cannot serve as a witness. So that is one issue that I see from an ethical standpoint. Absolutely, I'm sure that if she at some point is deemed competent again, then I'm sure that they would revisit the issue if she sought to have him back on her case. But
and another thing that I found really absurd is that when asked by the court, Mr. Means said that there was no conflict of interest and that he didn't represent Chad. So under oath, which is to me bizarre, that they let this whole thing go on this long. You know, we have our good friend over at the Reich, Scott Reich, you know, talking for over a year now that this guy should have been removed and his tactics are unethical. His motions that he put forward, Scott says he hasn't seen someone make these motions in his 27 years practicing criminal law in Colorado. So for me, I look at that and say, these are things that stand out to me, but they may not be a big deal because I don't know how, you know, the code of ethics with attorneys. Joe knows a lot about this stuff. Joe, you didn't feel at any time some of the things that he was requesting? Like, I thought as a civilian and as a law enforcer that it was bizarre that he wanted to have a private phone for Lori Daybell, Vallow in the institution to have 24/7 access that would just call him. That made me think in my mind, like, is this guy in a relationship with this? Like, is he in love with her? Like, and there's many people in the chat that feel the same way. I mean, I know that's kind of crazy and probably out there, but this guy was acting like almost like it wasn't even his client. It was his girlfriend. I don't know. Am I off base with that, Joe?
Yeah, a little bit. And I'll just say that because
I like to be off base.
The law looks at, you know, we used to call it the foggy mirror test for ineffective assistive counsel. Put the mirror under his nose. If it fogs up, all right, you got a good lawyer. You know, that's really like to take that right away from someone. This person has to be doing something so horrible. You know, the court, especially when you're talking about government lawyers now, you know, from someone who's adverse to it. Like when Archibald was appointed, she fought it. She didn't like it. She didn't want him. And this is a government lawyer. I don't know if they have the same system we do. I don't know if you know, Jess. Is it like an 18B situation or are they institutional providers? Either way, they're paid by the government. So, you know, when you're talking about now having a government lawyer come in that you don't like, you know, and you're not happy with, I think the court really has to look at that, despite the fact that he may not be the best lawyer. He may be filing, you know, awkward emotions and making unusual requests. That's not enough. He's got to be violating the code of ethics or some other rules of ethics that he could be removed from, or there has to be, you know, an obvious conflict that's unwaivable. Some conflicts that just aren't waivable. And of course, Jessica made a good point about the attorney witness rule. The attorney witness rule is interesting, though. I mean, it sounds like from what I'm reading that he's swearing to facts that he's learned from his client in his declarations. So that should be secret, and ordinarily it would be attorney-client secret. But when you take facts that your client gives to you and you swear to them, you're kind of making yourself a witness against your client because, you know, they could introduce that and call you to the stand, if it's something so significant. So that's not good that he's doing that. But I don't know what the facts are that he's swearing to. Maybe he has to. Sometimes you have an obligation to represent your client. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm representing the young lady who was charged with extorting Elliot Spitzer, the former governor, and she's now suing him.
Right.
Well, at the time, she was pro se at that time when this thing was all going on between her and Elliot, but Elliot had his lawyer dealing directly with her. And one of the issues in the case is Elliot filed a lawsuit against her and she was pro se, so his lawyer was communicating directly with her, and it ended up that she was required under the settlement to destroy video and audio recordings of Elliot Spitzer. Some of them contain evidence of his criminal activity.
Right.
That's a crime.
Yeah.
That's a crime, and to conspire with your lawyer to do that is a crime.
Yep.
In any event, it makes him a witness in my case, and I'm going to depose him. So he may have to, he has a bigger firm, so he could have another attorney come in. That there's some different rules here, but he's a witness.
Right.
But what choice did he have when she's pro se and he has to deal directly with her?
Right.
He had to become a witness.
I wanted to ask you, though.
So much a violation, it's just a matter of fact.
Right. But I did want to ask you, Joe, and Jess, you can chime in too if you want. Isn't it a fact, though, that the DA, Rob Wood, asked Mr. Means directly in a hearing, did you in fact represent Chad Daybell? And he answered defiantly no. And that, in fact, was not the case. Am I in a different planet here, or am I hearing this the wrong way? Because I tried to research this case, and do some brush up, and I know I'm COVID foggy, but this guy seemed like he outright lied to the court, and they allowed that lie to be on the record for months and months and months without taking any action. And fast forward to December 28th, 2021, we now have this guy disqualified, not just on one thing, but definitely on that. Wouldn't he be looking at perjury charges?
I don't know if they would choose to prosecute him for that, but I do think that that is also in lines of an ethical violation, and then perhaps to an attorney grievance before the Idaho Bar Association, the bar examiners rather. And because I think that is really a material misrepresentation to the court. And he went into court and said that and put that on the record. And he also filed declarations, I believe, in some of the documents under seal. So right. That puts him on the hook. I mean, he's going to have to explain that if he's investigated for that, if there is a grievance that that is, arises out of this. Yeah. So I think that's a problem. And one thing that concerns me, though, is I believe that, this has been going on for quite some time, that he's made that comment about only representing her. And obviously the prosecution was aware of it. And I don't know if Joe, you've probably had this experience too, but I know in practice, I actually had a case where there was a conflict, where there was an attorney who used to work for the government entity that I work for. And then later on came back in and he wanted to represent somebody that the office had prosecuted. And so it became an issue where initially, I don't think any of us realized it, because it's really the onus is on him to make sure that there's no conflict. Like when you take on a client, you're always going to check, do I have a conflict of interest somewhere along the lines here? So what happened in that case is, I don't know if he didn't realize, I don't really know. Like I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, right? But it was kind of a sticky situation. And ultimately knowing this, I had to go talk to him about it. And I don't think he was thrilled about the fact that I went and said, hey, I think you have a potential conflict here. I don't think he really appreciated the comment. But at the end of the day, he ended up recusing himself. So, I think that it's possible that was why there was a delay in this. Like maybe the prosecution was giving him the opportunity to recuse himself and to do the right thing. I don't know what your thoughts are, Joe, but it definitely was in my mind, why this delay? Why wasn't that, if you look at that instance where he stood up in court and it was, I believe, the video, and you can see the prosecutor, like his face, like he has this look like
he did the dog thing, like
yeah. So,
I watched that over
obviously
and
he
over.
knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knew that he was lying, and that was like
Yeah.
7 months ago, right?
Right. Right. So I'm like, did they give him time? Did they tell him, hey, figure out
Hey,
what you're doing with this? I don't know.
let's do a pool in the chat here. Let's do the jury. This is our jury pool. Please, in the chat, and be honest. If you feel that Mr. Means is guilty as charged here, not guilty as charged, but definitely wasn't honest with the court, put a 1 in the chat. And if you feel that he was just trying to defend his client, put a 2. I don't think we're going to see not one number 2, unless it's somebody who really just wants justice not to be served. But here, it's just lighting up like a Christmas tree. But Joe, quickly before we get the jury is in, it's over. It's a wrap. I mean, we just broke the internet with number 1s. I have the statute up, the 17-page document. Do you want to go into that a little bit? Because I'm starting to lose some steam here. So
Yeah, there's some good stuff there. But I just want to make clear, me personally, as a lawyer, I would never, ever take on these 2 clients simultaneously, the joint representation of both of them in this case, unless the facts, conveyed to me that they were totally, like they have an alibi defense and they're both unrelated to this in any way. You
Right.
just can't. It's improper. But you have to, like I said, weigh that interest, that she really has the choice. Okay, so going back to that document, I hear what you're saying. It was very interesting. It was a good read. He unsealed another prior order in order to identify facts that were found. These were findings of fact that another judge found that he incorporated into this order. And it has to do what you touched on,
can everybody see this good? I'm sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
Just by a show of hands in the chat, should I make this a little bit larger, a little larger than life? How is that? I just don't want it to be fuzzy or foggy, so to speak. Like, I don't want it to be COVID fog like I am right now. Can everybody in the chat see this? Just by a show of hands, just say yes or no. Thank you, Cheryl Smesler, for liking the stream. Angela is giving me 5x5. Okay, Central, is it 5x5? Can everybody see this? Can you make it a little bigger? I knew there was going to be somebody that said that. But guess what? The person who said, can you make it bigger? That's Rose. I love her because she's the only one that sent in a question to us. So I'm going to go to her question right now for Jess and Joe Murray. Rose sent in a DutyRon.com. She said, do you think that Mark Means and Lori Daybell Vallow were having an affair, and that is why he was removed from the case? I think so. So thank you for that question. Joe, what do you think?
I would not speculate on something like that without some objective proof of it. I mean, that's a horrible thing to say, without something more. I mean, just to speculate on that. I just think that's improper. He's a licensed attorney, officer of the court, entitled to,
Right.
I think, the benefit of the doubt in this
Do you
case.
think that his relationship was a little odd with his client from a professional standpoint? And that's a legit question.
One of my biggest criticisms I get, especially from Ange, is that I have a very close relationship with all of my clients. And unfortunately, they call me 24 hours a day. They call me. I got calls on Christmas, just checking Joe on this and that. Because of my relationship with my clients, I think it's something that helps, the case, and it helps, my
Right.
representation. But something like that, I wouldn't engage in that, number one. And number two, I think you're really doing him a disservice without any
Right.
proof of that.
But I got to tell you, Joe, a lot of people, the outside public, people who are watching from the outside, feel it is a little odd relationship. It's not something that you see. But then again, like you said, most of the attorney client privilege is done behind closed doors. This one is out in the open. Jess, what do you think? You're a woman. I'd like to get a woman's perspective from a legal standpoint.
I mean, I agree in the sense that with Joe, I wouldn't want to speculate on that because, I have no idea. And just because something looks a certain way, if it could just be optics, like we don't really know the details. So I wouldn't want to say exactly, what what could or could not be happening, because that's probably not fair to do that.
What was your perception of it, though?
I mean, well, this is the thing.
He's gonna force you.
From a woman's perspective,
Well, this
what
is
were
the
you
thing.
thinking?
When I had clients, when I was in private practice, I would have my clients come in and I would talk to them, you know, in layperson's terms, like exactly kind of what I try to do on my channel.
Mhm.
And I welcomed the opportunity to.
Uh-oh. See, that's what happens when you get a
I was always, you talk to me that way and things like that.
Okay.
But would I give my client a phone in jail? Like, would I file a motion to give them a cell phone in jail or wherever she is in a mental health facility?
Direct
I don't
access.
think I wouldn't personally do that. Like, yes, I would give them my access to my phone numbers and they could reach me if they needed to 24 hours a day. But I think there's a professional line that you draw to. And I don't mean any disrespect at all to Joe, because Joe's an awesome. He's like, you know, there's not a lot of defense attorneys that I really admire, but I admire Joe.
All right, don't feel like you're going to hurt his feelings. I'm just trying to get
I
your
know.
But anyway, so okay, I got nowhere with that question, Joe. Thank you. You knew that I wasn't going to get an answer. But, hey, for my audience, guys, I tried to get an answer out of one of these two, and it's almost like I felt like I was talking to Ollie North at the Iran Contra hearing.
But I really don't think that's happening. Especially, I mean, she's in lockdown. What access would he have to her? You know, I mean, there's.
All right,
really
we're gonna get to the document now. But Sana Elise Holth Johnson sends in a $50 super sticker, and I want to say thank you so much for that. Thank you for the support and the super chat. No message on there, so I have nothing to read, but I have something to say, and I say thank you. Janet Pirate sends in a $15 super chat, and she says, "Do you think? I think." When Means shot out motions and went after the church and the medical hospital where Lori is at was the final straw. So basically she's saying, you think Means, when he shot out the motions and went after the church, the LDS church, and the medical hospital where Lori is at, that was the final straw for her. So she's basically saying, yeah, DutyRon, I agree with you. So thank you to at least one person shouting it out from the rooftops. I got someone to agree with me, and I feel happy about that.
You know, I'm just going to add one more thing. Wasn't this cell phone having to do with COVID in some way? That
no, he said it was. I remember this very well. He said so she can have direct access to dial just to him for legal 24/7. He wanted her to have a dedicated phone where she could pick it up and call him and talk to him, because she's going to be in a very uncomfortable place, a place where she might be out of her element. But anyways, that is what it is. That's what I remember. Let's go to the statute so we can get through this, because I really want to just have an explanation of how they came to this, and I think we got a pretty good overview of it. But I wanted to see, you know, Joe, if you can expand on any of this in this document. You want me to scroll to anywhere in specific?
Yeah, so let's scroll through this. It just the first sentence on July 27, 2021, plaintiff state of Idaho filed a motion objecting to the entry of Mr. Means' counsel defendant Lori Noreen Vallow Daybell. So that's where we start with this. He objected right away to the entry because, and he wants the court to do this inquiry for what he believes is a non-waivable conflict. That's an important distinction. We have to understand there are potential conflicts. In New York, we have like a Gomberg warnings, People versus Gomberg, where the judge will actually on the record explain to the client they have a constitutional right to an attorney loyal only to them. And they go through these whole warnings about, you know, you have to waive this if you want this because of potential conflicts that may arise in the case. And you know that you're not going to be able to change that. So, you know, that we give those warnings right away. And I believe it was done in Lori's case where she actually waived those. It was waivable at that time. But now it seems like in the third line, he wants to see if Mr. Means has a non-waivable conflict. And I think this relates to that April 28th phone call. If you scroll down a little more, it says Exhibit 4, an audio file of an April 28th, 2020 recorded jail call between Vallow and Daybell. I mean, that was interesting. You know, the call, you know, I forget exactly where it is in here. I don't want to take up too much time, but the call had to do with Chad saying that because he now is represented by means, that it prevents him having to testify against Lori. Now, I don't know if he was saying that genuinely or trying to convince Lori that it was a good thing that the two of them had the same lawyer. I don't really understand what his motive was there, because it won't prevent him from, you know, doing any of that. I mean, that's just not true. But it could be that he was trying to plant the seed to raise this issue later when he wants to get rid of, because again, like I pointed out, it's his conflict. If he has prior representing him, and if he now decides, I don't want, because of the conflict of interest of sharing prior confidential information with Mark Means, I don't want Mark Means to represent Lori. He has that right to do that. Right. You know, he because it's his client secrets that he's trying to protect. So I really don't understand why he did that or what was on his mind. But if Mark Means played a role in this anyway, there would be your, you know, attorney misconduct that could bar him from this case. So I don't know if we had access to that call or.
And do you think Mr. Pryor has just been sitting back and saying, let me watch this cluster unfold and let it work to my client's advantage? Is there any advantage to a criminal defense attorney seeing, and I mean, because he seems like a smart dude. He seems like he knows his shit. Could he have just been sitting back and saying, let me just let this guy just bury himself? And is this in any way going to help Chad Daybell's defense? I mean, I'm just reaching at straws, but
I think there's some merit to that. But, you know, the one thing that I noticed, and it's in this decision, they talk about their office. I think they either share office space or on the same floor.
Right.
They're located together, so they obviously know each other. It just looks funny. I don't want to say more than that or go further than that. It just looks a little funny. And there may have been some.
Can you go just a little further, Joe, than that? Why not?
It just looks a little funny, because I represent clients in high profile cases, and I know some of it looks a little funny because I am unorthodox in some of my tactics too, but I don't want to second guess him on that. I mean, they both seem like, especially Pryor. I understand. I like the way he conducts himself.
Right.
It calls for speculation.
Right.
We're not doing that.
I'm doing the best I can to lead him into speculation, but he's not even biting.
No leading questions.
Daybell is currently represented by attorney John Pryor, who was present with Daybell during this inquiry. Anything of note that we might want to just look at here? Because I think everybody in the audience pretty much gets it. I mean, the Court TV doc provided the 3 or 4 pieces of what the court recused him or disqualified him for. Do they have to prove anything going further, or is this is a done deal? I mean, as far as I read, he's done. Like when you told me, well, she has a chance to, or if she's deemed medically competent, then she has the choice to say, no, I want to hire him back.
She can. I don't see any unwaivable conflict so far. They haven't revealed it here, any unwaivable conflict. The fact that he represented both, again, it's not an issue.
Yeah,
I do it in other cases, that I have nothing like this, but you remember all those cops that were arrested for Social Security disability, like 100 cops?
Yeah, I do.
They're all in the same indictment. They're all co-defendants.
So here's the thing. It says on May 2nd, 2020, Mr. Means told the court during a bail reduction hearing in Madison County for Lori that he represented both Lori and Chad. That's May 2nd, 2020, in the middle of this pandemic.
Yep.
And then on June 9th, a search warrant was executed at Chad's property. So the May 6th to June 9th, a search warrant was executed, and they found the kids buried on the guy's property. And at that time, when those felony destruction and alterations and concealment of evidence under Idaho Code 182603, he now said, whoa, 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 I can't represent these two. So Mr. Means just thought maybe that people would just forget about the May 20th appearance at the bail reduction. I mean, Joe, Jess, is this not like a royal up?
I don't know what he was thinking. I'll be honest with you. And when I see that, that's all I can say is, what is?
Yeah.
Oh, hell no.
That's what I say to that.
Said things like himself. Yeah.
Yeah, I say,
exactly.
oh,
I don't know. I don't know what he was thinking. I'm like, what? I'd like to know his side of the story. I'd like to know how he explains that, because it doesn't look good.
Yeah, he's on record at a bail reduction hearing in Madison County and stating that he's representing both Lori and Chad. So,
Right.
I mean, this is like, this is pretty much of a ground ball. And you know what? Listen, I'm not the expert. I'm not a criminal defense attorney, but I have to say that this, to me, is pretty much like this guy was, he never represented somebody for a capital punishment case. And here he is trying to represent Lori Daybell Vallow, Shallow Vallow, as I call her. I think it's bizarre. I think that this guy didn't have, he was way out of his league, is the way it appeared to me. It looked like somebody that was a little leaguer trying to play in the big leagues. That's my take on it. And I don't know if anybody agrees with me. I think I could get a lot of people to agree with me, and I don't want to cause like a gang here, like gang war. But I think that most of the folks listening to this on the replay and watching live would agree that Mr. Means was way out of his league, and so many people saw it. And that's not because we hate on Lori Daybell Vallow for the crimes that she stands accused for, and Chad for that matter. I mean, in my eyes, these two are killing machines, and they don't deserve to see the light of day. But they definitely deserve the due process. I agree with that 100%, Joe and Jess. Anything else in this document that we could talk about?
Yeah, if you want to just scroll down real quick to, I don't even see page numbers on this thing. What is this? Keep going down until you'll see duty of inquiry, and then on the next page, Sixth Amendment rights. I think that's important to just highlight that.
Am I on that? Because I
keep going. You'll see there's a big block highlighted. I'm looking at it myself, so keep going.
This is the search warrant. Oh yeah, this is 17 pages, so I have it really
big.
Okay, this goes over the death of the kids, what they stand charged with.
Yep.
Yeah,
next page.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, here we go.
Look at that. The Sixth Amendment of the Constitution guarantees a criminal defendant the right to legal counsel. This right to counsel is applied to state prosecutions for felony offenses through the incorporation doctrine. That's an important thing. We should talk about that later. This right includes the right to effective assistance of counsel, which is determined by a two-pronged test. That's the Strickland test. To prove ineffective assistance of counsel, a defendant must show, 1, their lawyer's performance fell below an objective standard of reasonableness, and 2, a reasonable probability that but for counsel's unprofessional efforts, the result of the proceedings would have been different. So it's got to be material, something that would have changed the outcome. Case law demonstrates that an attorney conflict of interest can lead to ineffective assistance of counsel. This occurs if a defendant's lawyer actively represented conflicting interests and that an actual conflict of interest existed adversely affected the lawyer's performance and adversely affected. Included in the Sixth Amendment right to counsel is a defendant's right to choose his or her counsel. This is the balancing that the court has to do. However, while the right to select and be represented by one's attorney is comprehended by the Sixth Amendment, the essential aim of the amendment is to guarantee an effective advocate for each criminal defendant rather than to ensure that a defendant will inexorably be represented by the lawyer whom he prefers. See, I mean, that was that part of that. I like the court's, reasoning and inserting that, because those are the two interests he has to weigh.
Right.
The effective assistance of counsel, is this going to end in a mistrial? Is this going to be reversed? Or the other competing interest, the client has a right to choose the lawyer of their choice.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to do the time. I want to pick the person who represents me. And, you know, as a criminal defendant myself, I had an attorney that I did not agree with their position and their legal strategy. I fired that attorney, hired a new attorney. We went into the grand jury. We won the case.
Yeah.
Maybe I could, maybe I didn't know what I was doing, or I wasn't accurate, but it was my choice to make.
Right. But let's be clear here. Lori Daybell Vallow is right now deemed not competent to make these decisions.
Correct.
Okay? So what we're speaking about here is something that could potentially come up in the future. But right now, as it stands, she's deemed incompetent and not able to make her own decisions. That's why I was confused a little bit when the judge allowed her new attorney, Archibald, to now go and explain to her, if she's not competent to stand trial, how is Archibald going to go to this facility and explain to her this process? And how is she going to be able to process that and make a decision? Yeah, I want to keep this guy. No, I don't want to keep this guy. So how is this legal mumbo jumbo makes us as civilians go crazy? Our heads explode. We say,
Ron, I mean,
Oh, hell no.
it's a waste of time.
It's so hard, but that is the standard. That's how she got declared ineffective. She wasn't able to meaningfully contribute to her defense,
right,
and communicate with her attorney. If you can't do that, how is he now going to go there and explain all of this to her? It's counterintuitive.
It's an uphill battle. It's counterintuitive. For me, it just seems like this is going to be the trial that never gets off the ground. And like, I wanted to ask you before we wrapped up, if in fact they keep saying that she's incompetent, what happens? And I'm glad Jess came back, because I know she's going to add something to this too. What happens if these doctors say, and she's faking all of this? I know that she's competent. We all know that she's competent. She's full of shit.
Steady, trooper.
She's full of shit. So
I don't see that the doctoral in psychology.
What happens, Joe, if they deem that she's completely incompetent? What happens to this woman? Does she get let free? Does she run free and get away with murder times 8?
No. Why don't we give that to Jess, because she did the research on this. I want to give it to her, but
okay, let's.
The answer is no.
Jess, I
agree.
Does she run free? Does she get away with murdering not only her 2 kids, but numerous other people?
No. So when you look at it historically, what happened, as you guys all know, originally there was like the 90-day stay, I believe, and then they went back into court and the judge ordered the 180 days in the state hospital. And I think that was September 8th. I was trying to figure out the dates earlier today.
We won't hold you to it. It's okay.
So I think that 180, I think those days are up somewhere around March, like March 8th. Right. So what happens now is at the end of that, if her competency is not deemed what they say legally restored, right? So in other words, like she's in the custody, I believe, of the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, I believe. So the psychiatrist and the psychologist have to adjudge her to be competent again. And if they can't do that, then what happens is they go into an involuntary commitment process. It's a procedure that goes on, and every state has one. And like I said, I'm not licensed in Idaho, so I don't know all the details, but basically,
I'm sure you researched it.
I did. So essentially, what happens is there are experts who are in the form of doctors, and it's usually more than one doctor. I mean, when you involuntarily commit somebody, you're essentially depriving them in a sense of certain rights that they have and civil liberties. So that is something that's looked at very clearly. So, as much as we like to say, oh, she's faking it and she's not, it's all baloney. I mean, then you're arguing with 2 qualified psychiatric doctors who have that expertise to make that decision. So, they would have to say that she's no longer competent to stand trial. And then what happens is she would go into the custody of the state and be put in the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, so whatever the institution is. So essentially she would be institutionalized, and then she would receive treatment there and medications and therapy and whatever they could do to help her. And they would just continuously review how she's doing. So if she never gets to a point where they can say that she's competent again, then she stays in the system. And when I was researching it, it's actually kind of interesting because they said in the state of Idaho, and there's other states that this kind of thing, also can go on, but people can almost get stuck in the system. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like just a circle. It's like a cycle going around and around, and it's just a matter of time. So, we'll see what happens with that.
Here's my thing, Jess, and I don't mean to cut you off because, you're giving us great, valuable information. But now what happens with Chad Daybell? Does he stay in limbo? Can his charges go forward? Joe, Jess, what's your thoughts on that? Is this Chad Daybell? Does his whole process get held up because she's playing fake psycho? And if she's able to trick doctors, then she's a pretty good fake. But what happens with Chad Daybell, Joe Murray?
See, I mean, representing Chad, I would move for severance right away, and try to. I don't know if there's any Bruton issues or, stuff that would compel a severance, but I would not want to be in the same trial with Lori. So,
how about you, Jess? What's your thoughts on that?
I totally agree with what Joe said. Absolutely. I think that they should be separate, and I don't think that what happens with her should really impact what's going on with him, essentially.
It just seems like this whole thing is getting dragged out, right? We see this being dragged along because of her acting. Okay. She all of a sudden became mentally incompetent when the chips fell, when her world came crashing down on her. But if you guys remember, when Nate Eaton from East Idaho News was following them in Hawaii when they were having their luau and their children were buried in his backyard, she seemed to be pretty sharp. She was like, "Oh, that's nice. You're all praying for it? Oh, that's nice." She seemed to be really competent. She seemed to be pretty snotty, pretty snide, pretty sharp in her answers to Nate Eaton. And when she was in court and talking to her attorneys and whatnot. But all of a sudden, when the chips fell, she went to that insanity thing. And for me, I don't buy it. Is there a bird in the background there, Mystery Maven? I hear like a little bird chirping in the background. Maybe it's
not that I know of.
Maybe it's my bird.
I don't have a bird.
Makes that same noise that I keep hearing. But anyways, you know what I'm saying? It seems like it was a convenient call for mental health counseling by her. Now, I know her attorney, Mr. Means, requested it, right? Wasn't it Mr. Means that said my attorney is she's not absorbing what we're talking about, and she went right back to her whole, wildness and whatever the conversation was with him. But I just think that, once she saw the enormity and that she wasn't getting out of this was the choice that she took to go. And I'm not sure if she was coached into that or if she just decided to do it on her own. We'll never know. But the bottom line is it just seems so convenient and it's dragging this whole process along. So the state can't proceed with their case, and Chad Daybell is in jail, and he's not getting any kind of due process here. I want to see him go and stand trial for 2 kids.
All right. But be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. See, the state wants them both together. I think because, I've had this where I've had severance on cases.
Expand on what you mean that the state wants them together, Joe.
The state wants them together because they get to prove their case and they have 2 people to point blame at. When one's missing, we call it the empty chair defense. Oh, that was her brother that did this. That was it. He can point fingers at the empty chair where she should be sitting and try to deflect liability from him. So the state wants them both there together. And another reason is because they're now revealing their hand. They're showing their full hand at the trial. So if for example, if Chad goes first, Lori's attorney will have the transcripts of every single witness that testified in Chad's trial. And they will already have, given their opinion or testimony about what they believed happened. And now they can't change it and modify it in Lori's case, and they'll be impeached and called out for it. So it's a much more difficult case for the prosecutor when they're severed and they've had to reveal their whole case and all their experts and all the transcripts to the second defendant.
Right, but
And
Joe, I
usually-
think that they're looking to sever the case. That's been part of the argument. Now, I'm not an expert on this, and I haven't been following this really, really closely, but I do remember Mr. Pryor asking for severance, and that's not something new. This is old news. He hasn't been granted that yet, but I think that's the angle that the defense is taking. He doesn't want the prosecution to have the state to have them tried together. So Mr. Pryor has been pushing for severance of this case and for them to be tried separate, because he wants to just get this thing on with, and he doesn't want to have. Obviously, I think we all know what's going to happen. She at some point is going to snap out of it and say he did all of this to me, and then I'm the victim. That's usually how these things go. But anyways, again, this is just a frustrating case to the 10th degree. We have the Ghislaine Maxwell jury. The verdict came down at 5:00 or so today, New York time. 5 out of 6 of the charges she's been charged with. That'll be a whole nother story to speak about in the coming new year. But I think justice was served for those victims, and she really 5 out of 6 of those charges federally. Some of the strongest charges against her, she was found guilty of, and I don't think she's going to see the light of day, and rightfully so. She's
well, listen, this is her opportunity now. Now that she's convicted, she can cut a deal. She's got big names.
Oh, hell no.
Sorry, Joe. I had to do it.
Sammy the Bull killed 19 people, and he's out walking around now.
Somebody send the cops to Joe's house, please. Yeah, you're right. Sammy the Bull killed in the teens, right?
19.
Yeah, and now he's got his own podcast. He's out. He's on Police Off the Cuff.
He's making bank on that thing. He's doing good.
I don't know. Listen, we're over an hour. I think we effectively covered this tonight. I think we really went over it quite a bit, and I appreciate both of yours perspectives. Jess, any final parting words for the folks that are tuning in, and some people that I know there was a lot that agreed with me, and there's probably going to be a lot that disagree with both of you guys, but your information is a lot more valuable than what I have to say, because you guys are the pros. Anything on this? What's your thought process on what is going to happen with Lori, and what's your thoughts going forward?
Some things that are in my mind. I'm curious to see if there's going to be a motion to reconsider in this case. Maybe not now, but like down the line. So it's something that I'd like to see. What would happen with that. But I'd also like to see if at some point there's a legal malpractice claim against Mark Means because of what he did. If that does go to an attorney grievance too, I wonder if he will seek to essentially get his fees back to him. So that's something that's like just in my mind, but I guess we just kind of have to wait and see what happens with this, but it's definitely an interesting case. So I think that we'll probably know more once the clock, starts to run out on the 180 days, which is in March. So,
yeah. And there's a lot of people who feel she is competent to stand trial, and that this is all just a big a ruse that she's doing. I know Joe, feels like everyone's entitled, and it's true. Everyone's entitled to get medical attention if you are not mentally competent to stand trial. It just seems so convenient the way it all unfolded, and that's all I'm saying, Joe. I respect the job of a criminal defense attorney, and I think that like you said, you say it so well, Joe. There may be, God forbid, a time where you need a criminal defense attorney, and you would not have that same attitude. It's it's your life that's on the line here. So I get it. But
Yeah.
I'm always a good judge of what's put in front of me. And for me, I can say this because I got this channel and I'm able to have this microphone in front of me. I feel that, I call a spade, and I think that she conveniently is working the system. Just the way that mobster walked around with his bathrobe. I forgot his name, but
Benny the Chin.
yeah, Vinny the Chin Gigante, right? He walked around with a goddamn bathrobe for 20 years or 15 years, and nobody was buying his bag of goods. But it is what it is. Joe Murray, final words on this case and any others going forward. And I want to promote Allegedly Guilty before we go, but just about this, and then we'll get on to Mystery Maven and Allegedly Guilty.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate being here. I love the Mystery Maven, appearing here with me. I'd love talking to her about cases. I wish I could bring her in on some of my cases. But just to talk about this issue real quick in closing, you're entitled. You have the right to counsel in the Sixth Amendment. You have that constitutional fundamental right. It doesn't guarantee that you have perfect counsel. And you have the right to choose imperfect counsel. Just like the law, I try to think of an analogy in the law, the freedom to contract. You have a right to enter into a bad contract, a poorly bargained contract. It's still going to be enforced. There are some for extreme, one-sidedness in a contract, but you have a right to bad bargaining and pay extra for something that someone else would have paid less for. The court and the law supports that. It's a fundamental freedom of yours and to enter into a contract, and also as an attorney to find an attorney that you feel comfortable with. I gave the example with me. I was facing felony charges in the grand jury. I did not like this lawyer. I fired him. I picked another one. That is the Sixth Amendment at work right there. Right. And I may have been wrong. He may have had the right strategy, but it was my choice to make. And I think taking that away from her is, I push back against the government interfering in our freedoms. This is one area where I really push back hard.
Right.
Granted, she's not competent right now, but once she is rendered competent, this should be revisited.
And there's definitely an argument that her representation was not competent as well because of a lot of his actions and the things that he did. It's not just me saying it. Other attorneys have chimed in.
You're 100% right. That's why I tried to do that. I don't know, Jess, like the freedom to contract. Yes. You can pay $20,000 for your car, and I can pay $25,000. Both contracts will be upheld.
Right.
You have a right to bad bargaining. She has the right to pick a bad lawyer.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? Listen, I want to say thank you to North Florida Gary for the super chat and anybody that I missed. Steve Cash says, so one has the rights to have a friend represent them? No, it's got to be a person that's registered in a legal representation. It can't be just a friend representing them. I believe you have a right to counsel when it comes to something that's serious like this. You can't just have your friend. You can represent yourself. Right. We looked at Colin Ferguson, who stood, he shot and killed numerous people on the Long Island Railroad. He represented himself. It was a mockery of the justice system, but it was his constitutional right, and they let him do it. I don't know if any of you guys remember that, but I do. It happened right in Mineola, right where I live. As a matter of fact, me and my brother went to that train station that day that happened. We responded over there and saw the carnage right in front of us. So let me look at the chat quick because I think I neglected the chat a little bit. Crystal Champions here. Schmitty is in the house. Thank you, Schmitty. Jen Lowe. I want to say special thank you to the moderators, the people who support through leaving comments down below, everybody who goes on to my social media, all one word, DutyRon, and subscribes to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of the Facebook groups, my Discord group. I'm now on TikTok, for crying out loud. Go over there and check out all of my stuff. Check out Joe Murray on YouTube. I'm going to put up his stuff right now. There it is. Allegedly Guilty. I am subscribed. My bell is rang. This is all. I'm going to go full screen. Stop laughing, Joe. I'm showing off your channel here for
I love it. Thank you.
Council.
I'm so sorry. Yanj and I, we love this thing. We're having so much fun with it, but I got so bogged down with work. But we're going to come back hard in January.
So here, I'm going to link Allegedly Guilty down in the description, and I'm going to put in the Mystery Maven. Hold on. Let me type it right. There she is. Boom. You guys are going to see, here's her channel. I'm subscribed. Jess, Mystery Maven, subscribed, and the bell is rung. So here's all of her stuff. She's got some stuff on her channel. She's going over some of these trials and doing her thing. Everybody go over and subscribe to her channel. Let's bump her up to 5,000 tonight real quick. Yeah, I appreciate you guys coming. And this is my first live stream back from COVID. You know, Alicia says that she's subscribed and the bell is rung. Isabella's here. Look at, who's this? Angela? Who's this Ange? There she is. That's your
there she is.
Boom.
She's on her phone copiously texting something. I don't know.
Yeah, she's busy moderating my chat, you know. So Isabel says, DutyRon, if you're TikTok, you have to dance and sing. No, that's not what I do. No dancing and singing for DutyRon. But again, tonight is, you know, this was a great thing for me to be back. I feel 100%. You know, I still probably have a little bit of remnants of the COVID still in my system. I feel good. I feel strong. And I'm looking forward to my domestic violence live stream that I promised you guys. It's going to be a great one, and we're going to do it right after the first of the year. Joe Murray, will you come back again and revisit some of these things with us, please?
Absolutely. I love it. I love being on the show. Love to see the Maven. This is great. So anytime.
Yeah, and it's the first debut of Jess, the Mystery Maven.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so honored to be here. Really, you guys are the best, and I've been watching you for a while, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. I appreciate it.
This to me, you're welcome, and this to me is a pleasure and an honor to do, because not only are you one of the supporters of a lot of great channels that are here, Police Off the Cuff, Allegedly Guilty, me. You're a content creator, and you know what? I love to highlight some of the great content creators that are out there, and you are one of them. So I recommend everybody go over and check it out. Check out her channel. Check out Joe and Ange. Those two are great together. Joe kind of talks a little bit more than Ange does, but you know, we're gonna work on that. We're gonna work on it.
I love the interaction, though. I love it. I think you guys are awesome. It's so interesting.
I had dinner with them. I had the honor to have dinner with them, and look what I have right here. I'm going to go full screen.
Sweet.
There it is.
He's got the merch.
I got the merch. I got a ton of stuff here. Look, I got buttons. I got Allegedly Guilty coins.
Yes.
All kinds of stuff, man.
That's awesome.
So
I'm making them for my firm too, because we have that logo with the horse for the firm. So I just love those things. They're fantastic. Nice. So everyone that hires me gets a coin. That's nice.
Excellent. Guys and girls, if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to Mystery Maven and Allegedly Guilty. Give this a thumbs up. Share it out onto your social media platform. I will see you guys on the next live stream. I got to go to bed. This old man is tired. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. Thank you for all the support, the super chats, the people who watch the replay. As I always like to end these, God bless the world. God bless the United States of America. And God bless each and every one of us here in the chat. But especially Ed Wallace, my good friend, who is fighting COVID. He needs us now more than ever to support him. Leave him messages down below. I know he's watching this. I know he's going to look at it if he's not watching live. Leave Ed a comment, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you so much from New York. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.